You are connected, and you are listening to Specifically for Seniors, the podcast for those in the Remember When generation. Today's podcast is available everywhere you listen to podcasts and with video at Specifically for Seniors YouTube channel. Now, here's your host, Dr. Larry Barsh.
Today on Specifically for Seniors, we're sitting down with the creator and star of one of the longest-running one-man comedy shows on Broadway, with almost 10,000 performances. My mother's Italian, my father's Jewish, and I'm in therapy has met with rave reviews to sold-out crowds in the United States and abroad. Steve Solomon, welcome to Specifically for Seniors. It's great to have you here.
Thanks a lot, Larry. It's good to be here. It's good to be any place after 16 months of being no place. But thanks to COVID.
Thanks to COVID. I hope it's over. But
yeah, well, it is, because the shows are opening up, the venues are opening up, and it's good to see people back. It really is.
Okay, you grew up in Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn?
Yes.
What was it like as a kid in school?
In school, it was fine. It was Sheepshead Bay was a tough. Half my family's Italian, half of them are Jewish, which is the truth. And growing up in that environment, it was pretty much it. It was a mixture of every culture. And I tell in the show that it's true. 10 times a day, people will walk past me, grab their crotch, and go, "Hey, Stevie, how you doing? Everything good?" I hate when women do that. It's So it was a great neighborhood. It was a multicultural neighborhood. And if you did wrong, you got hit by anybody, somebody's parents. It didn't matter. And then when you went home, if they called your mother and said, "I had to hit Stevie because he did something wrong," my mother would hit me anyway. So it didn't matter. It was a great place to grow up.
When did you start using dialects and voices like you just did?
When I was a kid. In the summers, my mother wouldn't let me just sit around the house and scratch my butt. So she told me to find a job. There was a big Chinese restaurant just on Ocean Avenue and Avenue X and Jay Wong's. And so I would deliver to the apartment houses. But I found it was very difficult because I'd push the button. Somebody would say, "Who is it?" I would say Chinese delivery. They'd never open the door. So I learned as a kid when they would say, "Who is it?" I would say, "Just a minute." And that was it. Then when they opened the door, I'd say the guy just left. And I was very successful like that. I used to do that all the time. I had the ability, and that was one of my gifts, to change the pitch of my voice. I could go, "Way high." Or I can go like this and talk like my sister, the smoker. And what that got me out of trouble, because if I would cut school, back then when you and I were in school, they would call home to find out where the kid was. You know, Johnny didn't show up in school today. But if you called ahead, they would say, "Okay, he's good." So I would call the school. I remember I got in a lot of trouble. I called the school. I spoke to the truant officer. Like anybody under 50 knows what a truant officer is. I spoke to the truant officer. He said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yes, I'm calling on behalf of Steve Solomon. He can't come into school today. He's very sick." And the guy said, "Who's calling us?" "This is my father." And that got me punished. So it was a lot of fun growing up. I'd been doing voices all my life.
What was your life like before you became a comedian? You had some other jobs?
Yeah, I was a physics teacher. I taught advanced placement physics in high school and first year college. And then I went on, I worked on my PhD for secondary administration. I became an assistant superintendent of schools on Long Island, assistant to the superintendent of schools on Long Island.
I can imagine what your classroom was like.
They loved me. I was a lunatic. And that was the big problem, because if there was an explosion, Steve did it. If the lights went out in the building, Steve did it. And the teachers would know to look for me. Yeah, he's working on something. And the only thing was that I had to leave because my brain was turning to jello. I can't stand bureaucracy. I can't stand politics. I can't stand that stuff. I can't stand rules for the sake of rules. And in a school setting, there were a zillion rules, and I couldn't handle it. So I used to break the rules all the time, and everybody would yell at me. Yeah, this is not for you. Yeah, you're going to get arrested one day. You're going to do that. And one day I just said I couldn't do it anymore. And I had always been doing men's club roasts for my dad's temple, and for my mom's church I would do ladies club speeches. So I wasn't afraid of getting in front of a microphone. And I could do the accents and dialects. My father spoke like a little old Jewish man, that's the way it was. And my mama, she had that Italian accent. So we did the best we could. So I said I couldn't live it. And I followed my heart. I was very lucky.
Where did your story go from teaching?
I left abruptly. I woke up one of these mornings. I had this epiphany. I said, I can't do that. I'll go crazy. And I thought I was a great stand-up comic. I wasn't. I really was terrible. I didn't have 2 minutes of material. And this gentleman named Rick Morgan, who I still keep in contact with on a daily basis, he's a great guy. He had seen me at one of the church functions, and he called me and he said, you have a gift, and not too many people have that gift. Did you ever think about doing it professionally? So I said, of course not. I was an assistant to the superintendent of schools. And he honed me and put me in some clubs and paid me $35, $40 a night. It was great money. And I was terrible. I had no material. I had no idea what was involved in developing material to do stand-up. And I was the grandpa of the industry. I mean, the people backstage hated me. What are you doing here? What's the matter with you? What do you think? You hot stuff for you? And I did at that time, but I had no talent, no skills, no nothing. Well, I had skills. I could do voices and characters. Nobody did that, but I didn't have any material to work with it.
And you met a couple of people who changed your life?
Well, Rick was one. Rick was a big one. But I don't know if you remember Pat Cooper.
Yes.
Yeah, what a great man he is. And I got a call one day from an agent that said Pat wants somebody to open for him, but the guy's got to be over 50. He didn't want any of these kids going, hey, how you doing? Where you from? Good to be here. I flew in for so-and-so. So I had the opportunity to open for Pat Cooper in New Jersey. And we were doing 2 shows, and I was such a nervous wreck. To me, he was an idol. He was on all the TV shows and everything. And he comes back, and in his coarse way, he says, Stevie, nice to meet you. How much time you doing? I said, 20 minutes. No, you got to do 30, 35 minutes. My back's killing me. I can't get up there. 35 minutes. I said, I don't have, well, do what you got to do. So I squeezed out 35 minutes, and we went intermission. We go backstage, and he says to me, what are you doing here? What the hell's the matter with you? I never heard voices like this in my life. You don't belong here. Go down to Florida. They'll eat you up. I said, I don't know anybody in Florida. And he said, well, you go down. I'll make an appointment for you. And Pat Cooper's the one who sent me down to Florida to meet with the big agencies. And then I was the most sought after comedian in my price range in South Florida. And it was very interesting because I was doing 30 shows a month at about $100 a show. It was pathetic. But I was butting heads with everybody who thought they were terrific, and they weren't. And it was a very interesting thing.
Where did you get the idea to write a show based on your family?
I
life?
I met a lady named Abby Koffler, who's the director of, she's vice president of Century Villages, and she also handles all the entertainment. She didn't like me. I didn't like her. And subsequently, she became my manager. She's been my manager for 21 years. But I said, I don't want to do this. I'm starving. If it wasn't for the fact that Jane, my lady, at that time we weren't married, was making a good living, we would have starved. I wasn't making any money at all. And I said, I got to come up with something. I got to create something that nobody has done. Well, there was only one-man comedy show floating around on Broadway. It was called Defending the Caveman. And that was it. So I said, I got to create something. So I sat with Abby, and we went through 100 titles, and I'm good with titles. And I picked, my mother's Italian, my father's Jewish, and I'm in therapy. She agreed. We loved it. Now what do we do with it? We didn't have a minute's worth of material on that show. So I said, we got to get an appointment with the biggest agency in the world, the William Morris agency. Well, what the hell? William Morris wouldn't even, I mean, they would step over my dead body. Who am I? I'm nobody. And make a long story short, too late. We just got 5 minutes with a gentleman named Kenny DiCamillo, who's the executive vice president of William Morris. 5 minutes. And he made it very clear it was 5 minutes, not 6 minutes. And we went into his office up at the William Morris Agency. And in the lobby, the cast of Law and Order was sitting there. I mean, my nipples were hard. I couldn't believe this place. And Kenny starts chatting with Abby and my other manager, Howie, and they're talking about war stories. Oh, you remember the time that Tony Bennett threw up on stage and so and so. And all I know is my 5 minutes is clicking away. And I said, Mr. DiCamillo, I really would like to talk to you about it. He says, listen, kid, my roster starts with George Carlin and ends with Ray Romano. Do you think I need another comic? My bubble was burst. I was out of it. I said, well, I have a show. It's called My Mother's Italian, My Father's Jewish, and I'm in therapy. He busts out laughing. He says, can I get that show exclusively? I said, sure. We didn't have a show. We had a title. Kenny then calls the King Center for the Performing Arts. Steve Janicki ran the place in Melbourne, Florida. Says, I got a great show. It's called My Mother's Italian, My Father's Jewish, I'm in therapy. Steve Janicki starts laughing. Yeah, we can put it in. Kenny goes like this. How much do you need a week? I said, I don't know. I was getting $100. He says, all right, but he's got to have $25,000 a week. And drool starts coming down in my mouth. And I think I'm in a movie. I can't hear. Well, all I can tell you, Larry, is within an hour, we had $150,000, $175,000 worth of bookings on a concept. And then Kenny said, go write the goddamn show. Abby hired a director. We got set designers. We got consultants. It took a long time to get a director because I'm ADD, horribly ADD, always been that way. You know, I can sit and talk with somebody and then I'm on the piano and then I go off the piano and then I'm soldering some piece. That's me. And Andy Rogo, who is my director, who is very gay and just like this, I can't take it anymore and I'm finished with you. It's over. I hate you. Well, he's hated me through 5 different shows and 20 years. And I love him dearly. He's a great guy. And we wrote the show. And it opened 2002, started touring. And we went to Broadway 2007, I think it was. And it was good.
When and where did your parents meet? How did they get together?
Mom and Dad. My father met my mother in a restaurant in Italy after the end of the Second World War. My mother was the bouncer, and my father would always say, "From the very first day I met your mama, son, she chased after me." I said, "That's because he didn't leave a tip." I know my father. That was what it was. That's where they met. And it's great. I mean, people always say, did they fight? I said, yeah, occasionally my father would look at his burial plot as a vacation getaway, but otherwise that was pretty much it.
Did you have much confusion on whether to go to church or go to temple?
Oh, no, there was no. It was never even discussed. It was never open. Religion wasn't a problem, ever. You know, it's just they just debated, and my father wanted one thing, my mother wanted another. It didn't matter. In the show, I say my father made me go to Hebrew school, and I went to church on Sundays to pick up my grandma Angelina. You know, and then we talk about Angelina, but that was it. There was never religious problems in the house.
So, are you really in therapy?
Never. I never went to therapy in my life. In fact, I'm in the first show, because don't forget there were 5 shows. In the first show, I'm at the therapist's office, and he's running late. And Miss Smith keeps interrupting everything I'm saying, and she makes me crazy, you know. Steve, the doctor's running really late. You want anything? No. You want anything? No. You want anything? No. I don't want anything. And we established that, we can't find doctor. And his name is Dr. Asoli. That's Asshole. To me, that's asshole. That's it.
How do you do 20 or so different voices?
It's not so much the voices. I have to assume the character. So when I'm talking like my grandma, my Jewish grandma, I'm hunched over. I talk like my grandma. When I talk like my grandpa, Angelo, he's a little old Italian man. He talks like this, He's a very, very... And the audience has to see the figure and hear the voice. So that's what's really important to me. And when the two of them are arguing, Mama's over here's got one face, Daddy over here's got another face, and they argue back and forth. So I'm always turning my body to create the illusion of another person on stage.
Those of us who are Jewish grew up knowing about safe trafe when it came to Chinese food. But what was it like when your grandmother and your Italian wife got together and you were talking about kosher and she was talking about kosher food?
My Italian mother. That's a bit in the show where Bubby comes over, my Jewish grandma comes over and tries to teach my mother to keep kosher. And my mother says, so let me get this straight. You can eat meat and milk together. It's no kosher. She says, that's right. It's not kosher. Okay. So veal parmesan, that's no good. The meatball parmesan, the cheeseburger. You got it. What about chicken parmesan? No, chicken parmesan is not kosher. What about fish parmesan? That's okay. That's kosher. Okay, so shrimp parmesan is kosher. No, according to Jewish law, shrimp's not a fish. My mother goes crazy. And then it closes with, so let's go back to chicken. Chicken and cheese, that's no kosher. She said, I told you before. What about eggs and cheese? Eggs and cheese is okay. So let me get this straight. If I got an egg in this hand and a piece of cheese in this hand, that's a kosher until the egg hatches, and then it's a no kosher. She said, you finally understand. She said, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. That's the bit. That's a kosher bit in the show.
I said at the beginning that show did over or almost 10,000 performances. Is it different every time? I can't imagine redoing the same show over and over on Broadway.
Broadway is not a pleasure. I have to tell you, when we first opened, the first month was excited. I was on every TV show. I was on the good morning shows. I was on the good night shows. I was on the late night shows. And after that, you kind of don't have anything to do during the day. I mean, I was walking around New York City making friends with the homeless. Hey, Charlie, nice to see you. Glad you got that tooth whitened. So it wasn't that great. In fact, most people know on Broadway, you don't make the money. You make the money on the tour. You brand the show on Broadway, and then you go out and you do your tours. And I change the show every night. The show's changed every single night. Not dramatically, but if the audience is more Italian, I can get it early, and I lean towards Italian. If they're neutral between the two, I have different techniques that I use, but it's never the same. People have come back and brought people back a week later, and it's a different show. Well, in South Florida, you could come back the following day and it'd be a different show. But to them, they don't remember, so that's fine. But. You were very good. You're the best singer we ever had. Thank you. I'm glad you like it.
As a dentist, I just love that line. Glad you had that tooth whitened.
Oh, yeah, right.
So that's not the only show you're doing.
No, there are 5 shows. The second show was my mother's Italian, my father's Jewish, and I'm still in therapy. And the scene there is, it's a birthday party, my father's 90th birthday party, which takes place at his clubhouse. And the setup is the entire clubhouse. But it's a clubhouse party that was put together by 190-year-olds. So it's the clubhouse is chaos. In fact, there's a giant banner in the back that says "Happy Birthday, Louie," and it's BIRTDAY. Giant banner, and it's really cute. That's a good show. I like that show. The third show was My Mother's Italian, My Father's Jewish, and I'm Home for the Holidays. Now, that was created because of what happened when I was performing in, it wasn't Vegas, Atlantic City. I was doing 6 weeks at the Hilton in Atlantic City. And we finished, and the buyer, the director, came down to meet with my manager, Abby, and my agent from William Morris, Kenny. And she said, "This has been great." And Kenny said, "Well, let's bring him back next year." She said, "Well, he's been here 2 years in a row." And then Kenny said, "Well, what about his holiday show?" And I looked at him and I went, "What holiday show?" You know, he came home for the holidays. Oh, that holiday show. I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. She says, "Okay, we can bring him in December." And I grabbed Kenny. I said, "I don't have a holiday show." And he says, "Put one together." Now this was June. Normally it takes a year to write a show, rehearse it, and mount it. Here I had 6 months. And I said, "You're out of your mind." He said, "No, you could do it. You could do it." So I had to create a holiday show in 6 months while I was touring all over the country. So it was tough, but it's a lot of fun. Then we came up with one called Cannolis, Latkes, and Guilt. The Therapy Continues. That takes place in my parents' attic in Brooklyn, and they're just moving. They've moved out, and I'm just upstairs checking out what's left. And I go through it, and I go through the memories, and I find my old wedding album, and then I find, what is it? Oh, my bar mitzvah album, and I open it up, and I go, "They're dead. He's dead. They're all dead. Everybody's dead." And it's cute. That's a good show. My favorite show, which doesn't book well, is called From Brooklyn to Broadway in Only 50 Years. And I love that show. It's a culmination of a lot of the skills that I learned in the other 5 shows, but it doesn't book well because the title just doesn't have a punch to it. But I get a big kick out of it. It's a lot of fun. It's essentially me against the millennials.
There's a lot of us on your team.
Yeah.
What do you attribute the longevity of your shows to?
Identification. Everybody walks in there and identifies with some character or somebody in the show. There's a sweet, soft spot in the show where Grandma passes away. And writing out of that spot was probably a year's worth of trial and error. Because when you have a funeral in a show, you can't get them laughing. Well, I get them laughing, and the minute my Uncle Paulie, the stupid Uncle Paulie, I call him the mental midget. He always has advice, and he comes in, and it's in the funeral, and he says, "Stevie, I want you to know something. Take my advice." I said, "Uncle Paulie, I'm not taking. No, listen to me. Take my advice." And I look at the audience. I say, "I'm supposed to take the advice of a man that thinks KY jelly is marmalade from Kentucky." And that's how I got at. That's how I get out of that scene. Otherwise, it's every night is nerve-wracking. I remember I was opening for George Carlin, and I was so excited. 5,000 people, and I was backstage standing there, nervous as hell. And Carlin came over to me and he says, "You nervous, kid?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "You feel sick?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Good. When you stop feeling like that, quit." I said, "You get that way?" He says, "Before every single show." And that's the truth. I get nervous before every show. I just want to hear the audience. I want to get the flavor of the audience, and it's important to me.
How did the lockdown during COVID affect you?
It shut me down, completely shut me down. So what we wound up doing was we were approached by a production company in Las Vegas called the Golden Network Television Company. And they asked if we would do episodes from parts of my shows or new parts of my shows. And essentially it was from my book, which I had written a year before, Political Correctness and Other Forms of Insanity. And it was a bestseller. And so we did was we took excerpts from the books, and actually behind me is one of the production facilities here we have. And I'm talking to you. It looks like Starship Enterprise monitors and video editing suites. So we do that. We did that for throughout COVID. We did almost an episode every day or two, and it was it's a lot of fun. The episodes I get a lot of emails and comments about the various episodes because they're edgy. Because I'm edgy. My whole family was edgy, and they're a lot of fun. It's on the golden. You need a Roku device to get it. You have to have a Roku TV or a Roku device, and you just download the Golden Network television channel, and as soon as you click it on, there's my ugly face. The show is political correctness and other forms of insanity, and that kept us going for 16 months because we had nothing to do.
The book is available, I would assume, on Amazon.
It's on Amazon, but I don't push the sale of the book. I'm not like that. But it's the show that's a lot of fun, really a lot of fun. It's crazy, absolute insanity.
So I'll push the sale of the book.
Yeah, go to Amazon.com. Right.
Where are you appearing next?
I don't know. I got Peter in one of our actors. I think I alluded to this when I spoke to you. I'm just opening up my schedule right now. Smaller venues around the country usually can't afford to bring in big shows, and not that mine is a big show, but it's got a set and everything like that. And what we do is I've trained 2 actors to do my show, and I'm just looking at my schedule now. It took about 6 weeks for each actor, and they work through a touring producer, Phil Roy, who's really terrific, and he brings in my shows, various shows around the country with the other actors. And right now, Peter is in Wilmington, and I think I opened someplace. I don't even know. I swear to God, it's like lunacy with me. Call me when it's over. Wilmington, and then I go down to Lakewood, Colorado, and then there's 6 weeks in Kirkland, Seattle, and then I think I have a month off, and then it hits the fan in November, beginning of November. I do a week in Waterbury, Connecticut. I do the Palace Theater someplace else, and then I open in Vegas the end of November, and then middle of December through the end of December, I'm pretty much running around Florida.
So people who want to see you can check your schedule at your website?
SteveSolomon.net.
Okay. Did we miss anything?
No, did you have breakfast?
I'm living in Florida. Ask me a question that I can remember.
Right. It's one of the things where in the show I say to them, I said, my parents live in a gated community. A gated community. This is where hundreds of beautiful homes are being protected by an 84-year-old guy from Jamaica. I mean, what are they going to do? And they secured the entire community with a little bar that blocks entrance. I said, plus, my mother got something people don't believe. It's called senior citizen patrols. This is real. The cops give them little uniforms and cop cars. I got pulled over by one of these very senior cops. He gets out of the car, sets up his walker. You don't know why I pulled you over? No, officer, why? I forgot. It's a lot of fun, but your viewers and listeners can check out all my shtick on SteveSolomon.net. There are a lot of clips, and I think I'm all over the internet. But again, I lost my ego 20 years ago, Larry. I swear. I know what I do. I know people have a lot of fun, and I know in over 10,000 shows we haven't gotten one complaint yet. So that's pretty much the way it is, and I am politically incorrect, very much so, and I'm proud of it.
I live in one of those gated communities. People ask me which house is mine. I said it's the beige house on the left.
Right. And then they're walking up and down the street.
Steve, thanks for coming on specifically for seniors.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm glad I could oblige. I'm glad I was in one spot at the same time, because now I'm on the road again. I'm delighted to be on the road again. That's great.
You brought us some very, very necessary laughter in these times.
Yeah, I thank you. I think I'm blessed with that ability, and I'm honored, and I don't want to lose it. And my wife always says to me, "So when are you retiring?" I said, "When God tells me to retire. Otherwise, I'm just gonna have fun, do what I can, make people laugh, and thank you. That's all I can tell you. Thank you so much for having me."
If you found this podcast interesting, fun, or helpful, tell your friends and family, and click on the follow or subscribe button. We'll let you know when new episodes are available. You've been listening to Specifically for Seniors. We'll talk more next time. Stay connected.